Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. We're digging into the digital revolution and the incredible impact it's having on our personal lives, our business lives, and everywhere in between, if there is any space in between personal and professional these days. We're delighted to be speaking today with one of our favorite monthly digital all-stars. Bonnie Tinder is founder and CEO of Raven Intelligence, which does peer-to-peer review of software vendors and software projects and the partners they work with. Bonnie, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Happy 2022.
Thanks, Bonnie. Same to you. Same to you. And what's on top of your mind here as the new year gets rolling here? Gosh, we're into February already, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I mean, for me personally, I'm always making these New Year's resolutions. So I'm in January, and I've already failed with a couple of them that I had set out. So, Bob, do you make New Year's resolutions?
I don't. Bonnie, I'm not saying I shouldn't, but I don't.
Okay. Well, you're like most people, and the statistic that I heard this week is 90%. Even if you do make a resolution, 90% of the time they fail, and probably part of the 10% are lying about whether they actually succeed it or not. So, not
Bonnie,
a good deal there.
I don't know if this is just a cop out on my part, but one of the reasons I don't is um, I never quite got the thing right. It's January 1st. And in a way, I sort of understand why some people choose to do it. That's wonderful. But if the earth was farther from the sun and we had a 24-month year, when people do it every 24 months. So I just think it's sort of a quirky accident of where our little planet ended up and how far from the sun. So I make and break resolutions all year long. I don't wait for January 1st to do it.
I I think that's probably smart. Yeah, 1 year in between them is way too long to set goals. But
So,
one
Bonnie,
of
it
the
looks like, yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah, and one of the resolutions that I had was actually I wanted to read more this
Uh-huh.
year. And so, I've been tracking. I want to read at least a book a month. I mean, that's not very much of a lofty goal, but it was more than I did last year. I'm sorry to say. So that was like one of the ones that I thought, okay, that's a good new leaf for me this year. So I'm mostly on track with this. So I completed my first book in January. So.
Bonnie, fiction, business, history, music, adventure, what sort of books?
Yeah, well, it was the autobiography of Will Smith, the well-known movie star and musician and all that. So it was a story of his life and sort of all of the challenges that he faced.
Yeah.
And so it was a really interesting story of his life.
No, that's fantastic. Fantastic, Bonnie. Well, good. I'm glad you're keeping up with that one. It sounds great. And it looks like, Bonnie, from what you had shared here, that you've got an outlook on business metrics that really matter, and that maybe they carry some sort of a similar responsibility, like resolutions, right? They're no good unless you stick to them and really carry them throughout the year.
That's right. And what gets measured gets done.
Mhm.
And so, as I was thinking about New Year's resolutions, I mean, there's such a parallel between the goals that we set for ourselves personally and the goals that we set for ourselves in our work lives as well. And of course, on this channel, we talk about digital transformation and digital business initiatives. And I think there's some metrics that really are significant in the measurement ongoing of projects. And we all know, anybody listening to this podcast knows how expensive and time consuming and how much focus these type of initiatives take. And so much of the time it's difficult to understand, like, did we actually hit the
Yeah.
mark, and how can we measure that in an objective way? So much of the time it's like, well, we felt like it failed or we felt like it succeeded, and yet I think there's I came up with a list of 5 metrics that really you can anchor around to say thumbs up or thumbs down, success or keep going, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. Bonnie, what do you think of those? Which one came out on top of your list?
Yeah, first and foremost, it would be the business value delivered.
Mhm.
And this is a little bit of a Captain Obvious, but if you can show specific ties to revenue improvement, cost reduction, working capital improvement, those are the big three that if you can tie your digital initiative to any one of those 3 areas, and show that return on investment, those are the hard dollar metrics. Those are the $1 million type of things. If you can tie your project into those 3 things, that certainly is an area to measure against. And as you're creating a justification for a new project, those are the correlations that are going to be, most important to your board or your stakeholders, the decision makers who are going to say yes or no, is okay, how can you tie those into hard dollar savings or hard dollar revenue increases? And so I think that's number one is the business value that your project delivers.
Yeah. Bonnie, can I ask, do you find in the business value discussion, because I don't think anybody would argue with revenue improvement, cost reduction, or working capital improvements, but do you hear is the issue of speed or acceleration, helping companies move faster, is that something that would fit into the business value discussion?
Without a doubt. So, this idea that they can come to market more quickly with a product as a result, that they can be more competitive because their competitors aren't doing this. I think, the faster that you can get to realizing a transformation, the faster you're going to get to some of these things. So I think speed is certainly a factor in getting at revenue or cost reductions.
Okay. And Bonnie, as you move into your second one, I think it's interesting. I've just seen, all of the major cloud vendors, right, when they got started in the business, several years ago, whatever it was, they sort of followed it, the pattern of the old on-premises world, right? Big deal up front, you get that revenue recognized, and the salespeople move on to another deal. But in the cloud, right, it's different. And we see the big cloud providers moving more to a consumption model, right? The salespeople get paid when the customers actually deploy and use the products. So how about your top metric number 2 for 2022?
Yeah, and it ties in exactly with the consumption model, and that is stakeholder adoption. So are my users actually logging into the system? Are my users using the system for the purpose intended? And in the cloud world, so much of the revenue that is realized for software vendors is based on PEPM, or price per employee per month, certainly in like HCM systems or things like that. So you price it out by users. So the more users that you actually have active on the system, there's ways to easily measure that, electronically. You're getting your usefulness out of licenses. The worst thing is to spend a big PEPM and you have 10% of your your users actually logging into the system consistently, or they're still using other methods to get things done that circumvent your new system. And so measuring the stakeholder adoption, how do my employees or how do my customers embrace this new system, is a really important measurement as well. And if you can get within your first year 80 to 100%, that's a home run.
That's great. And then, Bonnie, I know on your third point, I wanted to mention this, about customer experience. I was talking several months ago with CIO of a big insurance company, and he was really harping on this notion about the importance of customer experience. And he said, I know it might sound a little weird. He said, I don't think people generally equate buying insurance with joyfulness and pleasure. But he said, we're really aiming to make this a joyful and pleasurable experience. So, how do people try to keep track of that? And how does, customer experience, number 3 on your list. So it's got to be very important. How do you measure that?
How do you measure joy?
Yes.
So that's a very good question. And I think in part you can measure that through customer sat measurements. And what we consider in the industry as net promoter score. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend this vendor or this, service to someone else? And, so that's sort of the tried and true, 1 through 10 measurement. But I think you have to go deeper than that to really get at, what's a true positive customer experience. So you have to look at churn. And you might have great customer service as a software vendor, but a big degree of churn because while your customer service is great, they're answering questions that shouldn't have been ever asked in the first place. And so I think it's more important that, customer service is part of an overall experience that your end stakeholder gets by using your system. Are they able to improve the quality of, the lives of their employees, let's say if it's an HCM, or their customers, if it's a customer facing type of system, are they able to retain their customers for a longer period of time? Or are they able to, train their employees better, offer better programs, or, increase retention because their employees are, actively participating in the culture? All of those things that's quite a bit different than on a scale from 1 to 10, how satisfied are you? That measures, sort of a larger equation about a positive customer experience. Again, to say, just to define this one more time, a high degree of customer service does not guarantee a positive overall customer experience. And that's where it's important to look at your churn rate, your stakeholder satisfaction, as well as those who are administrating or responsible for the system itself, your IT department. You have to look a lot broader than that to really measure that joy, as you mentioned, like that insurance company wanted.
Well, Bunny, I wonder if there's if a certain implementation that the software is in, the application is done, but nobody uses it, customer service is never going to hear from them, not because everything's going great, but because it's not being used.
That's exactly right. Perfect example of, hey, customer service might be great, but I would never know because I've never called them. Yeah.
So, Bunny, before we go into number 4, I just wanted to share this message from our sponsor, BMC. BMC wants to know, is your business on its A game? That's when systems are intelligent by learning from markets, where automation is paramount yet effortless, and when technology and people work as one in an enterprise. The A game is your business at its absolute best. BMC calls this the autonomous digital enterprise. To find out more, go to bmc.com/A game. So, Bonnie, what comes in at number 4 on this list? Because we have business value delivered, stakeholder adoption, customer experience. What's number 4?
Number 4 is the engagement that you have between the functional business team and IT. And so often, there is conflict during a implementation or a transformation process between IT and the actual business stakeholders. It has a lot to do with the expectations and in some cases the overall change management of what is happening with the transformation. But if there's not cohesion between the business team and IT, that project is really going to have a problem succeeding. And so if you can look at, particularly the first year of a transformation and measure the level of engagement from, business and the IT team members, and if that's high, you have a great foundation from which to be successful, because you have your stakeholders really working with IT to make sure things get wired properly and the right aspects of the functional business needs are put into production. And vice versa, IT also needs to have the business functional users have to have the time and the bandwidth for which to provide that information, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, this is a technical project. Our IT team is going to handle that and throw it over the wall," type of thing. So it really is, can you measure the engagement between your functional business teams and IT? Are they working together as a cohesive business unit? If that is the case, particularly in the first year, it's a great foundation to say this project is a success.
Yeah. So, Bonnie, and then number 5, it looks like I don't. All of the points on your list here have been incredibly important, right? Business value, stakeholder adoption, customer experience, engagement between business and IT. The 5th one is a little more sort of cold and ice. I mean, it's just the numbers, right?
It's cold. So it's system uptime and availability. So that sounds like a really easy measurement, right? 99% system uptime. It goes a little bit deeper than that, though, in that it's also needing to measure technical debt. So, how difficult is this thing that I'm putting into place to support? If half of my IT team turns over and all of a sudden all my knowledge walks out the door, moves into other functions under new assignments, are we going to be left with a system that's so highly customized that we can't maintain it over time? Or the same with the business side of things too. If our users turn over, is this thing so difficult to roll out to new users that that we're not getting the usage that we did in previous periods of time? And so I think it's looking at, okay, so what sort of technical debt does this new system rack up over time? Is it going to be easy to support and maintain, knowing that your team is going to change many, many times throughout the lifetime of the product that you have in place? So it's system uptime and availability, but it's also the availability to maintain that project and that platform over time after go live and for many years after that. And more importantly, incrementally build on it for the future.
Yeah.
Not have to go through this whole thing, again in 5 years.
Bonnie, I was intrigued at the beginning of your discussion about uptime and availability that you brought in the subject of technical debt. And I'm wondering, as more companies either become aware of it or they might be aware of it, but they try to push it off to the side because it's too painful to think about. Do you think that there will come a point when you do your 5, key metrics for the year that reducing technical debt, is it a contender to make your top 5 list?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. Because I think that builds, the less technical debt that you have sets you up for future years of success. And, so much of the time, I mean, the reason that technical debt accrues over time is like, this concept, if it's not broke, don't fix it type of thing. And, you have limited resources and time within your organization. And sometimes fixing something that isn't necessarily a sore spot today will snowball over time. So I think having that technical debt and being aware of it, and are we taking away from that technical debt by putting in a new system? I mean, those are things that are definitely in the positive column. Or are we adding to the technical debt by, not addressing a problem today? That we should be thinking about, not so much what do we have to spend, but what are we going to have to, how is this going to snowball for what we have to spend in 3 years if we don't fix it? So it's those risk factors that I think that really come into play in this final point here about technical debt.
And Bonnie, I think you offered some great perspectives on all of these. I think especially the last one, uptime availability, what's the cost if it's not up and available, then your points about technical debt. And I guess, people really have to look at these 5 in terms of sort of the mega trends or mega issues in the market right now. Every company, right, unlike in the past where we could sort of say, okay, my plans for technology aren't going to change that much this year. We'll have some projects, but my business is rolling along. But everything now in business is changing. So the need for companies to be more digital, be more nimble, focus their time and money on those things that really matter. All these 5 great metrics that you've pointed out seem to be they've always been important, but they're absolutely, I would say mission critical these days.
Yeah. Well, and, as you were talking there, I was thinking about, these issues that happened with security in December, that Log4j program, and, how much extra expense, the millions of dollars to remedy those situations. Had those companies been presented with knowing that that was going to happen, they would have gladly spent millions of dollars to prevent it happening in the future. And I think, so much of you need to look at in this 5th area is what is the risk that we bear for not doing this or not having the right security measures in place that could potentially come and bite us out of the blue, like what happened in December with the security breaches.
Yeah. Well, Bonnie, thanks. This is a great list. I wonder, do you have a final thought on sort of the perspective overall for how people can do this and what the great research that Raven Intelligence puts together? What final thought would you offer to everyone?
Absolutely. So I think these are the meta metrics. These are the ones that you can, anchor your project to really say success or failure. That is not to say that there's not, many metrics that lead into this. It's the same thing like, I want to lose 10 pounds, right? So you can look at the scale and, measure and step on the scale every single day. But if that's the only thing that you're measuring and you're not looking at, your exercise and your calories and all of those other small measurements along the way, that scale is not going to, your 10 pounds is not going to move. Right. And so, what I would say is these are these are the fundamental sort of questions. These are the fundamental things you want to think through when selling a project before it happens. But it's so important to look at the small gains along the way that make sure that all of these things happen. And that's really, what Raven Intelligence is doing is measuring sort of the project fundamentals to make sure that all of these things happen in the end, and finding the firms that are making sure the project fundamentals are in place to make sure these mega issues are successful, or these big points are successful for companies. So, I think, metrics are hugely important. Not only, the big ones, but making sure that you're on target to hit these along the way. And that's really what we do every single day is to help companies do that.
And Bonnie, where could our viewers go to check out what Raven Intelligence is doing?
Ravenintel.com. We'd love to have you. Love to have a review of your project that you've recently gone through as well, for our community.
Perfect. Well, Bonnie, thanks so much. Great to see you again, and look forward to talking with you next month.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
And folks, thanks to all of you for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. There's 5 great metrics for success Bonnie's put out. I hope you'll check those out, and I hope they play into your plans and all for 2022. Thanks for being with us.